Hello, assalamu alaikum, good morning, khushamdi, ji ayanu, goeiemorgen, ishpata.
Bakhair agale, ni hao, churushumme, washmale, ohio, gonzaimes, guten morgen, hola, bonjour, privyet, kaifa hal? Halishuma chatore, ahlan wasalan, marhaba, buna, mucho, gracias, suavia, balli kare ayan. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into PTV World. You're watching World this morning, and you might probably be in 46 different countries because that's where we are reaching out. And ladies and gentlemen, may it be morning, may it be night, may it be evening, or even if you are sleeping, we hope and pray that everybody out there is ready to kickstart their day with us and that you're going to have a great week ahead as well. Hello, Shiza. How are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely great. Thank you so much for asking. How are you doing, Shazad Khan, my co-host?
Well, I think I'm doing perfectly fine. But, then there are days when you're overworked and you think that, okay, you know what, I probably need to take a few days off. But then as soon as I think of our followers out there, people who actually follow us religiously as well, then I'm like, yeah, you know what, you actually need to make sure that you're out there for them, because wherever you are in your life as of now is because of all of those people who've been sharing their love with us as well.
Absolutely.
So here I am, ladies and gentlemen. I wasn't really at the top of my fitness level early in the morning as well, or maybe not fitness level, I think my mood. But then all of a sudden, when I thought about all the people who are actually going to watch us today, it just lifted my morale up, and I was like, hey, you know what, I love my job and I'm going to do it, and that's what I'm doing right now. What about you?
And that's the spirit, actually, and I always appreciate you for that.
Oh, thank you very much for saying
forward
that. I like it when you always say it very formally. Oh, and which is why I like your spirit in this. Well, if for instance you are to say it very casually, how will you say it?
No, listen, do I say it differently when we're off screen though? Do I?
Yeah,
okay, well, thank you for
And this is something I've realized while I was watching a few of our previous programs as well. I was like, off the camera, she has a very different vibe, but on the camera you have a very formal, very decent. I mean, I know even off the camera you have a very decent vibe, but on the camera you have a very formal vibe.
Well, I would really.
It looks like as if somebody's there for a rishta or something as well.
I wished my audience didn't find that out, that I have two different facades. But yeah, I feel like, at your job you do have to bring some professionalism in. But in all honesty, I absolutely love talking to you guys, and I always say we love sharing our information, our knowledge with you early in the morning as well. It's sort of our job, yes, but we take it as a responsibility, because when we have this platform, we want to make sure to make the right use of it.
Exactly.
For so many years, Shazad, it really bothers me that this particular platform, because of course it belongs to the government and the government wants to make sure to give you the right kind of information, I feel like was not being used rightly. But ever since PTI did come, and I did come to this as well, I feel like we're making sure to use it for the right reasons.
Wonderful.
Which is why we need to talk about what important day today is.
But before we kind of move on towards what day it is, ladies and gentlemen, I think that the most important aspect over here is that me and Shiza, we were actually working together over the weekend.
Yes.
And I think it was a great project.
I want to, in front of everyone, I feel like I really need to sort of appreciate and be grateful to you for this opportunity, because it was an Urdu event and I never get called for an Urdu event.
It's all by Allah Almighty, and that everybody has their own chances as well, and alhamdulillah you were out there to seize it. And this is what I wanted to share with our audiences as well, that the entire program was supposed to be in Urdu. So I've been a part of Urdu programs, but usually programs are bilingual. So when I called Shiza and I was like, do you want to do this? And she was like, are you going to be there? I was like, I'll be there. But the way she spoke, ladies and gentlemen, her Urdu vocabulary was so great and amazing that people literally kind of clapped and they appreciated the kind of work they did as well. So for everybody who's out there, we are as desis as you are, and we know how to speak our language. So please make sure that you do not kind of have this concept in your mind that, okay, since they're doing an English show, so they would only be comfortable in speaking English. I mean, you can.
We just happen to know it.
Yeah, you can talk in Punjabi with me, you can talk in Urdu, you can talk in any other language you want, you can even talk in Arabic. Kaifa hali Arabi? Haza mahaza. Yeah,
I feel like
let's do that. But other than that, today coming down to the kind of important day we are observing today, ladies and gentlemen, obviously, whoever's on this planet as of now, alhamdulillah, and for the future generations to come, nobody kind of deserves to be poor. And this is, I think, is a human right, and you were born with it as well, that you're not supposed to be poor. But I think what happens within this world is that, when things come onto our table and when we are to decide, we do discriminate, because we are humans and humans do make mistakes as well. And then we kind of make sure that if we get a chance to kind of get something extra, we will never let it go. This is human nature.
Well, I really hope we are not those people when the time or the chance comes. I really hope so. Yeah. But here's the thing: we hailed from Pakistan. It is a developing country, yes, but unfortunately, if we're being fair, not everyone gets the same or equal opportunities over here. So, I was just reading and they said that roughly a quarter of the population of Pakistan is living below poverty line. True. And that doesn't mean that the other people are rich. Below poverty line means extreme poor conditions. There are other people who are living in probably slightly better conditions than them, but they're still poor. But the worst part about this, and I really want to sort of touch up on this, is how, of course, when you don't meet the resources, when you don't meet your needs, it does get to your mental health. And just recently, this was a story from Tharparkar, I think, where a dad threw 3 of his children into a well, unfortunately, because he just could not earn for them, and then eventually ended up killing himself too. This is, sorry to start my day with this, but this is just one story, reported one, and hundreds of such stories happen around us every time. We just don't know. It's all because of poverty. I feel like individually, even other than the government and organizations, we need to work towards it.
Exactly, which is why, ladies and gentlemen, today we are actually observing the day for eradicating poverty as well, and the theme is building forward together. Yeah. And to talk about this, before we kind of introduce our guests, we have this amazing report to share with you guys. Go ahead, take a look. And we will get a global perspective, and we will get a Pakistani-centric perspective as well. And how to kind of alleviate or eradicate poverty is something we're talking about. Good morning. Let's take a look at this report.
Let's do it.
Global extreme poverty rose in 2020 for the first time in over 20 years as the disruption of the COVID-19 pandemic compounded the forces of conflict and climate change, which were already slowing poverty reduction progress. About 120 million additional people are living in poverty as a result of the pandemic, with a total expected to rise about 150 million by the end of 2021. Today, Poverty Alleviation Day is being observed. This day provides a platform for people living in poverty and extreme poverty to speak out about their lives and their struggles against poverty. Population growth, ever-increasing prices, and unemployment are some of the major factors that are responsible for widespread poverty. The authorities need to do something about the high levels of poverty which lead many people to criminal activities and compel them to use illegal means to earn money and run their households. Also, children living in poverty are more likely to suffer from chronic diseases and diet-related problems. We need to come up with well-thought-out plans to deal with this problem. Government should create job opportunities and invest in small startups so that people are able to find good jobs.
I mean, and I definitely want to look from another perspective as well, where, God forbid, if there are people in a household and they do not feel like working, I mean, do we still blame them that, or probably do you think that we really need to blame the system where people do not have this habit of going out and working and looking for jobs as well? Because unfortunately, over here in Pakistan, wherever you're going to go, ladies and gentlemen, you will get beggars on the streets as well. And we know for sure as of now that there are mafias out there who exist and who send these kids and people to kind of go and ask for money because it's an easy income. And this is what people are kind of striving for if we go or probably talk about the lower segments of the society as well. But to have a complete picture, ladies and gentlemen, we're very lucky that we've actually been joined by some amazing guests over here. We're very lucky that we've actually been joined by an Italian guest. She happens to be the Italian agency. She's working for the Italian Agency for Development Corporation. She is Miss Manuela Benini. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And thank you very much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you. The pleasure is all ours.
Thank you.
And I like your spectacles as well. They're very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So alongside Ms. Manuela, ladies and gentlemen, we've actually been joined by the head of PPAF as well, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, and she is Ms. Aisha Salma. Hello, assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Walaikum salam. Good morning. Thank you for having us to talk about this important day.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, I feel like, Ms. Aisha, because we have been having you on this day for quite some time now, so I want you to begin with, ever since you last came here, I remember you were working on especially women's projects for poverty alleviation. How far have we come?
We've come a long way, alhamdulillah. These days, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund is particularly focusing on empowering rural women, rural youth with a package of support under our Ehsaas Amdan flagship program, the National Poverty Graduation Program, where we are working in 23 districts in all 4 provinces of Pakistan, aiming to reach 300,000 households over the next few years. So since the start of the program over the last couple of years, we've reached about 68,000 households. I'm very pleased to share with you that progress with a package of support, including asset transfers, where people can earn an income. And we're really talking about the very, very ultra poor segment of this society.
So first of all, I want you to kind of highlight the importance of this day, and then we will certainly throw a few questions towards you as well. So how important do you think this day is, and why should anybody live below the poverty line? You know, there shouldn't be any reason for anybody to live like that.
Of course. Yes, definitely. It is very important to speak about eradication of poverty, first of all, to try to root out what poverty is, and also to see how poverty is also an extremely important priority for development cooperation. Actually, it is the top priority. Whatever we do, it's always dealing with poverty.
Yeah.
And we are also dealing through PPF, for instance, through remote communities, the one that cannot be reached easily. Of course, we have a project that is now concluding. It has done a lot of 40 million euros that went through several years. But of course, the geographical area has been limited to 2 provinces, which is already a lot, KPK and Balochistan, and the very, very remote communities. So we are happy because it was the first time, as we have understood in Pakistan, that actually in a community, the different extremely complicated, let's say, issues like health, education, small infrastructures, agriculture, etc., have been taken as a whole in an integrated way. So this is important because you cannot just, for instance, deal with health and not with the rest, or deal with one activity and not with the rest, because of course you have to see it in its
So the approach
integrity.
needs to be holistic and inclusive, and we truly agree. And me and Shiza over here on the program, you know, even Jamshed Sab, our producer, and we talk about it. But ma'am, you know, since obviously the Eradication of Poverty Day was on Sunday, so we didn't have a show on Sunday, so we're doing it today, we're talking about it. But on Friday, we did a very amazing program, and that was about World Food Day.
Yes.
And, you know, it said quite a lot of things about hunger and how hunger is actually being used as a weapon within different regions of this planet, where people go and then kind of penetrate into other countries, or kind of whatever agendas they have. Do you think that poverty can actually be used as such a weapon? And if yes, how do you think that we need to stop it?
Yeah, stop it is, I don't know, we are all striving to try to...
We hope we get an
we
answer.
hope, yes, certainly. Of course, since the word is a word, it is also, I won't say a weapon, but let's say something that maybe if some people are poor, they may remain poor. Hopefully nowadays this doesn't happen anymore, of course.
All right,
We hope so.
Yeah, thank you very much for saying. I know that my question was out of context, but I wanted to kind of hear it from you, because this is how people kind of penetrate, this is how people take advantage of other people as well. But since you have spoken about KPK and Balochistan, I think it will be very pertinent if we move on to Ms. Aisha and kind of ask about how the grassroots level, you know, for example, if we are to talk about all communities who are marginalized, what kind of issues do they face in their everyday life?
So first of all, we have to understand, where does poverty lie in Pakistan. There are reports that suggest the bulk of the poverty pockets in Pakistan, over 80%, are in the rural areas. You know, 63% of our total population is rural anyway, and within that 80% of our poverty is in rural areas. So the work that we do has to be focused much more in rural areas, and of course we would also not forget some of the poverty pockets in urban areas, the urban slums that you and I have been witness to. In terms of everyday challenges, there are various, right? So when we talk about the rural poor, they face low access to education. Our adult literacy rate is just 57%. For a country that is middle income, mashallah, we have huge growth potential in Pakistan, yet a lot of our population is still illiterate. So the productivity, their ability to contribute to the economy is hindered by that. Lack of access to healthcare, lack of access to infrastructure, roads, connectivity, mobile phones, so that they can actually sell the goods that they do produce. We do have a lot of skills in rural areas, but it's more about being able to help those communities market their produce at a fairer price.
Exactly.
But also, Ms. Aisha, please, I want you to add, since you must be having some exact stats on the level of poverty that exists in Pakistan. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's not a scale we can put ourselves on, but is there?
Yes, Shiza, actually the last National Poverty Report came out in the year 2015-2016. So according to that, the percentage of poverty in Pakistan is about 24%.
Okay.
Now, we don't look at that figure in isolation. If we look at it, what it was in the year 1998 or even 1990, it was 57%.
Okay.
So you see, Pakistan did make a huge amount of progress in halving the amount of people living under poverty. And inshallah, this year we're having another survey conducted by the National Socioeconomic Registry, which is expected to come out as well. So we'll know the latest figures then.
Oh, brilliant. And we'd love to have you back again so that maybe we can discuss that further. But, you know, Shahzad, when we talk about poverty, definitely we are a developing country.
Yep.
We are not that old, of course. So we need to, we had
We're
to
young.
start from scratch, yes. And we're doing good. We're doing better eventually with every year.
Yep.
And we really hope to get there as well.
Inshallah.
But I'm pretty sure it's, I mean, it's the same everywhere. I can't say or I can't think of a country or a place where everyone is equally rich and happy. The class divide, as we call it. There's an entire theory, man. There's always going to be inequality in one form or in another.
But you know what?
Which is why, yeah.
I know, because you're actually kind of talking about a global perspective, but when you go to Saudi, when you go to Dubai, when you go to these countries, I mean, there's lesser disparity
But that's
amongst
quality.
each other.
No, that is quality of life. So even the poor exist over there, but their quality of life will be different from the poor in Pakistan. You understand that?
I mean,
There's-
I truly understand that, but I'm telling you this for sure that you know,
Okay.
over there the discrimination is very low. Over there the
Okay.
disparity is very low in the income groups as well, and their government actually kind of ensures that everybody's kind of getting enough to eat and survive as well. Which is
Right.
why I just wanted to move on to Miss Manuela over here, because you know, wherever you might go, you know, even if you go to England, you will see people playing guitars on streets as well, because they're needy and they need money, even though that it's a welfare state. But for example, if we are to talk about Italy, what do you think that the government of Italy did to make
I was
sure
gonna
that
ask
they're
the
going to
same thing.
eradicate the poverty amongst themselves?
Yes, one of course, what has been also worsened the situation is COVID.
Yeah.
COVID has really, in all the countries of the world, it has really worsened.
And even within
all the-
Europe, it was very worst.
Yes, in Europe it has been very, very strong, and of course this has also been a challenge. There is poverty, of course, in Europe. There was before, and there were more, let's say, happy times, and now again there is poverty. Of course, education is an extremely important, important matter. When you have education, you may come out of course, poverty easily. When you are well nourished, of course, you may come out of poverty as well. What is we speak also of cultural poverty, when people have no real ideas of what are their potentialities and the potentialities of their context and what can come out of their context for them to develop, which is also something extremely important. And also the lack of opportunities that is given by the fact that they have no hope to be able to enter in an economy as such. So in Europe you have more poverty than before, but now we are in Pakistan, and it is the potentialities are very high.
Okay.
But I think that education is very important, and also nutrition.
Exactly.
Yes, definitely. And I think I'm going to take this forward, actually. Sorry, Shahzad, but I do have a lot of questions for this. You know, to my understanding, I definitely 100% agree with you where you said education is the answer. But in this particular case, I feel like, and if you can agree with me maybe, it's sort of a cycle. When you said you have education, you can have nutrition, you can have, you know, all the other things as well. But it's also, if you're poor, how can you have education and nutrition is also a matter over here to look into. And especially, you said that 63% of the people do live in rural areas. among those people, ladies and gentlemen, even there's a further divide of vulnerabilities or people who are more vulnerable on the basis of gender, for that matter. And my heart goes out to this. I feel like I scream every day, Shahzad, on the show as well, that I wish I could do something for the women, especially living in the downtrodden segments of the society. And this is what all I can do, you know, at least raise awareness. Yeah. So you tell me, Ms. Aisha, what is PPAF particularly doing? We do know your activities, but what do you think are their needs and how particularly can we meet them?
And what steps are being taken?
Yeah.
I'm really glad you called out that gender difference, because that is something we see in Pakistan and globally as well. In Pakistan, I would say women in rural areas, the poor women and girls, of course, as you called out, face access to education. You've got primary education in most places, but secondary education, higher education is a different issue. So I think providing safe mobility and safe access to education is really important for women to be able to access those education facilities. The other aspect to this is making girls, young women and girls really equipped with technical and vocational skills, and giving them awareness of the opportunities that exist. Many times that we go out and meet these communities. I was just in Gwadar and Pasni last week, and it really struck me that women and girls there have the time, they have the ambition, but they don't perhaps know the full opportunities of marketing their skill set, right? So that, I think, if the role that we can play in the positions that we hold is to really facilitate them to have those access to opportunities.
Wow.
That's
wonderful. And PPF is doing so as well.
PPF doing a lot of work, as I mentioned, in our national poverty graduation, but also in our interest-free loan scheme, which we're delivering for the government of Pakistan. We're reaching 2.28 million families with access to affordable credit, interest-free credit, so that women as well as men can actually start up and increase their small businesses, small enterprises.
Exactly. And once you, obviously, they start up, so ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be a compound effect, and you know, inshallah, they will be kind of reaping the fruit out of it as well. But thank you very much, Ms. Manuela, for being with us. Thank you very much, Ms. Aisha, for being with us. Lovely to have you over here to talk about this very important day. Because, ladies and gentlemen, everybody's born to be rich. Please make sure that, if God forbid, if you do not have money in your wallet, you're rich at heart. This is something which is very important. But one last thing which I'm going to mention over here, and that is that ever since I used to go to school, wasn't really a good student initially. In my university days, I mean, I do not want anybody to take it wrong, because in my university days, I used to be a scholarship holder. You know, so there was a change, there was a shift in the way I used to think. And when my parents used to go for the parent-teacher meetings, they used to say, your child is very amazing, he's very creative, he's very hardworking, but only if he focuses to work. And I think that this is a social responsibility of every individual out there to kind of make sure that they work harder and try to kind of flip the kind of living they have already. God forbid, if they're not happy with their life, it's your sole responsibility to go out, look for the opportunity, and make sure that in the first place you're praying to Allah Almighty as well, because He's the one who's the Razik, and we are the ones who are the receivers.
Indeed, and I feel like, Shahzad, that was sort of the easier times for education as well, because of the pandemic lately. For the 2 years, everything is upside down. We need to talk about this, but right now we're actually headed to a very short break. When we come back, maybe we'll discuss with the right kind of people the face of education in Pakistan after the pandemic. Let's do it. Good morning.
The ancient city of Taxila is the heart of stonework in Pakistan. This art, which has been preserved and practiced for centuries, can be seen on many major landmarks of the country. Notably, the Pietra Dura work in the Lahore Fort's Sheesh Mahal. These stone products take days to complete and require immense precision and skill from the craftsmen. The final products are perfect for souvenirs, gifts and decoration pieces.
Welcome back to World This Morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your very favorite Shahzad Khan.
Thank you.
I'm Shaza Hashmi. It's a beautiful, beautiful day over here. It's Monday, yes, and I hope all of you are going to have an amazing week. We said we're going to talk about education. We're going to do that, yes, because Shahzad, ever since the pandemic started, first of all, everyone was so confused what to do with schools because, well, social distancing was a must, right? So everything eventually moved online. People started getting used to it. They were making blunders as well, but learning, because it was the first time everyone had to sort of change the entire facade of the education as well. Then things opened back because Pakistan was really smart in dealing with COVID-19, so schools reopened. Sometimes exams were happening, sometimes they were getting cancelled. It was just a state of confusion for a lot of students out there, but also the same for teachers too. So what is it now? Are we really back on track?
I don't think so that we're really back on track. Obviously, things are getting normalized. Alhamdulillah, the universities have opened up. You know, the students are going back as well. But we still do not know whether, God forbid, if there's going to be another wave.
I hope not.
God forbid. I mean, if only the people kind of comply to the SOPs being put in place, I don't think that we'll actually have to go back to that, because this is where we left from, ladies and gentlemen. But I think that the most important aspect is that as soon as the pandemic broke out, ladies and gentlemen, we all know that the quality of education dropped. Okay. Because in terms of online education systems or the learning management system, nobody was very well aware, nobody was very well equipped. You know, HEC tried to help the universities as well, and then there were a few universities who developed their own softwares, so that they can make sure that the students out there can kind of keep up with the education. I think in this time, Shafkat Mahmood Sahab is, I think, one of those ministers who's been loved by every student
so resilient,
out there.
I swear.
And you know, imagine that, you know, you passing without kind of attempting to give an exam is something which is a blessing, and everybody wanted it back in metric or probably FSC. I mean, it's different for everybody. But ladies and gentlemen, to talk about the standard or are we back on track as well is something to be actually kind of talked with people who belong to the university background as well or higher education, so that they can kind of guide where we are headed. And God forbid if something like this happens again, God forbid if there is another smart lockdown and the universities are to shut down, if people do not comply to the SOPs, what solutions do we have? Or do you think, or do they think whether the quality of education has gone down in the last 2 years, which I think it had, because there are a lot of memes on the internet these days that a mechanical engineer taking online classes and doing some different stuff. So there are a lot of videos you will get.
With doctors though.
Yes, so let's hear it from the horse's mouth, ladies and gentlemen. We're very lucky that we've actually been joined by a pro-rector from the National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad. He happens to be an educationist, a social activist as well, and a social scientist. He is Professor Dr. Muhammad Safir Awan Sahab. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting.
Thank you very much, sir. Wonderful to have you. This is how you will see any rector, ladies and gentlemen. You know, they are reserved and they make sure that they maintain their distance from the students as well. They, you know, they really need to be hard on students at times, because otherwise they won't study. But alongside Professor Dr. Muhammad Safir Sahab, ladies and gentlemen, we're lucky that we've actually been joined by an educationist. He happens to be a director at Al Huda International School. He is Mr. Atif Iqbal. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much for joining us. So, Professor Saab, I'll start with you, sir. Do you think that the standard of education has gone up due to the online classes and everything? Do you think that it has dropped down and that we really need to pick it up again?
Thank you very much. No, I think it's the other way around.
Okay.
obviously the standard has gone down drastically because of our change in the medium of instruction, and that was very sudden. For the teachers, for the students, for the parents, nobody was ready to cope with that new situation.
True.
And pandemic apparently was one thing, but actually in the wake of it, a lot of things came.
True.
And as
as
Shakespeare said, that when sorrows come, they come not singly, but in battalions.
True.
So pandemic COVID-19 was that kind of battalion of sorrows and misfortunes for the education sector in particular.
True.
As we know that other sectors have been trying to live with that in more in
and it has been very difficult.
Yeah, but for the education particularly, it has been hit hard throughout the world, and everyone involved, all the stakeholders, this triangle of students, teachers, parents, administration even, they were caught unawares.
Exactly.
So because of that, many problems multiplied, and universities which were better equipped in comparison to schools and colleges, they quickly built their infrastructure as well, but still many problems remained. Perhaps the biggest problem was this digital divide, which existed in our population.
Exactly.
If I take the example of my own university, we have students from across Pakistan.
True.
Students from interior Sindh to Gilgit-Baltistan and Kashmir and everywhere, and South Punjab also. So they didn't have even the infrastructure while living and staying at home and connecting with the LMS or CMS of the university.
Exactly. And sir, thank you very much for pointing that out, because I believe that everybody needs to have the right to kind of connect to the Wi-Fi as well. Because
yes.
This is something I still remember, Shiza, because even when I was a university student, I still remember that because you get students from all sorts of backgrounds, so our university came up with this plan where we can afford a laptop, and that too on installments. So our university started this initiative, which I believe was wonderful, and they equipped every student with laptops, which is great. Now imagine that, because I've been to Namal for a few of my English courses as well. I wanted to sort my English out initially in the early years, so I know how people are, from different backgrounds, and how difficult it is for them to manage to be in the university. So to connect to the the system of the university, and while being in Gilgit-Baltistan where there is no Wi-Fi, I think it's not the students' fault. So obviously, some people have been left behind and some people have been keeping up. But sir, moving on to you, because when we talk about schools, with schools, I think it was, the experience was more horrible. And I'm sorry to say that it's because of the fact that, alhamdulillah, I have an 8-year-old daughter who goes to school. She's in her 3rd grade. And while she was not going to the school, obviously she forgot to write, she forgot to read, and these were the problems. I mean, with university students, once you give them the notes and tell them, hey, you know what, your session is going to take place, they can still prepare. Yeah. But with schools, it was very difficult because the kids forgot, because they already were on a journey which actually started a year or 2 years ago, and they weren't in the practice and they started to forget. So how challenging was it for the schools?
Thank you very much. I think schools were impacted the most, and education sector was the most impacted sector, maybe after the healthcare, because as soon as the pandemic started, close to 190 countries closed down their schools, and that affected about 1.6 billion learners worldwide. That's about 94% of the young population that is there. And you're right that the universities mostly have independent learners who can teach themselves.
Sort it out, yeah.
They can take care of themselves.
Ho jayega, yaar.
But on the other hand, the school children, they have to be taught. They have to be nurtured, they have to be looked after. And especially with the pandemic, when everything went online, and as a matter of fact, most of the schools did not even have an online system in place where they can impart education to their students. So it was a very challenging and difficult time, not only for the students themselves, because they had to go through such an emotional pressure, not meeting their friends, not going to the school, being in an environment and learning which they are not comfortable with. And of course, on the other hand, their parents, you must have seen all the horror stories that are there on the internet, parents yelling at the children on camera and making them sit in front of a computer, which is not natural for them because they're not used to of learning in that manner. And of course, with those educators and teachers who had to take care of their children at the same time they were teaching and looking after their household work. So it's been very challenging, I think, for everyone, and students have been affected the most. And I personally believe that we don't really know the impact COVID has created on education yet, because the learning loss has to be calculated.
Exactly.
Over a period of years, right?
And it's just that it's intangible for now, and I think it will take another year to kind of assess that, what kind of losses we've been through within the education sector. But sir, there's one more thing, and as a concerned parent, I'm going to put it in front of you, because the single national curriculum has been implemented, alhamdulillah, and then all of a sudden when all these students went back to schools, so the single national curriculum books were there. I mean, the books which they haven't seen in their entire life, I cannot even kind of come up with the names or the titles of the books as well, because they were very different. Because once we were in school, it was Mashirati Ulum and stuff like that. So something like that in relation to the kids haven't seen them. Now there's been a constant pressure onto the teachers as well, where they really need to kind of go through the syllabi by the end of probably this year or next year as well. So what they're doing is that they're trying to push children. So what they do is usually now, this is something which has happened in my daughter's school, that they will actually kind of put commas onto a paragraph and be like, hey, you know what, iski imla tayar karke aaye, or probably I'll be asking you about the spellings, where the kid does not even know how to read it. So imagine, don't you think that there needs to be a balance within the push and the pull, because the students are obviously at the receiving end, but the teacher, if they will continuously push, the students will be a little disturbed. Don't you think that the schools really need to give them time to kind of get back into that pace?
You're very right that this was more of a political move than something which was favorable for the students themselves. And we as educationists do understand that any change needs time, and especially with young learners. I mean, they take much more time than what adults need to take. So it's a very challenging time for students, because they were out of school for quite some time. Then they returned to the school. They had a new set of books. As a matter of fact, some of the books were not even there for them, and they had to do some online research and maybe go through some online material just to prepare for that specific subject. So it's been a very challenging time for them. What I believe is every change needs time, and the government needs to understand that. The teachers on their end, of course, they have responsibility, and they have a duty to impart education to these young learners. But at the same time, most of the strategy related matters, of course they come from the government. Smaller schools can't do that. Private schools can't do that. It's basically a kind of strategy that comes from the government, and then it's rolled out and implemented throughout the country. So I think the government has been a bit quick in rolling out this initiative.
I think they've noted your message. Yes.
It's definitely a wonderful idea to have a single national curriculum, but we also need to understand that a national curriculum is not a set of books that need to be taught to the students.
Exactly.
It's a different framework. It's a
different
mindset
thought process
that needs to be put in.
Wonderful.
I think that was the intention, first of all, to change the mindset, and we really hope we get there. But Professor Saab, the pandemic hit everyone differently in a way that it hit some people harder than the others. So a lot of people who lost their jobs weren't sending their their kids back to universities or schools. Are there some students of yours who unfortunately couldn't make it back after the pandemic, first of all? And if there are some of such people, is the institution doing something for them? Because everyone deserves to receive education no matter what they went through.
Wonderful,
Yeah. Actually, as I earlier said, because of this divide, digital divide, this divide also exists in economic terms.
Yes.
And also in public sector and private sector terms. In private sector, teachers, administration, students, everyone was badly impacted, more impacted than in the public sector.
Okay.
Because in public sector, for example, the fee structure is comparatively affordable.
Yeah.
And at the same time, universities had certain system in place, financial support systems.
Okay.
And there are, many, for example, government's initiative of ISAS scholarships program. Pakistan Baitul Mal also, offering scholarships to the needy students. And certain universities themselves, they contribute in terms of concession in the fee.
Okay.
But Having said that, still there have been students and still there are students who couldn't make it back as earlier. They were, in, for example, in a better position. So some of them opted for freezing of semester.
Oh, okay.
Because of financial reasons.
Right.
And then they, gathered some resources and they came back. But again, I mean, it depends upon the leadership of each university and each institution.
That's true.
How they cope with this kind of situation. Some of them, come up with very reasonable plans to help students in need and in trouble.
Yeah, that's true, and I really hope it's a great thing actually, how you're letting them actually have the option of freezing the semester or probably still taking the classes online if you can't make it all the way to Islamabad over here. But I forgot my question.
It's particularly all right because I actually had one, and so I kept on telling her that I have a question. She was like, no, I actually need to add on something.
Sorry.
But you will get this opportunity again. But sir, now there's one more thing, and that is obviously we as parents, we always think about our kids and the kind of information they're getting or knowledge they're getting, and we're very concerned about it. But what we tend to forget is that there might be a few requirements by the teachers, professors, universities and institutes as well, which needs to be filled or probably fulfilled by the institute itself to kind of look after that they're at a comfortable zone and making sure that the kind of knowledge which needs to be imparted is being imparted. Now from a professor's perspective, from a pro-rector's perspective, and you said as a director's perspective of a school, what kind of assistance you might require from time to time as well to make sure that everything kind of falls into place as well, that the supply chain continues to go on? Because it's not just education when we are talking about an institution, it's human resource, it's management, and there are a lot of other things. So what is your perspective, what is your take on this, that hey, you know what, you really need to kind of think of us as humans and these are the things that we need as well? Because when we talk about a pandemic, sir, God forbid, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are actually missing out on their loved ones as well.
Yeah.
Amongst families, there are 3 people who are dead, God forbid, of this pandemic. There are either 2, either 1, and everybody's going through a trauma, and it has been a challenge for everyone. So how did teachers cope up with that?
Yeah. As I earlier said, that it's a triangle, and everyone involved, all stakeholders, they have been impacted badly. If you look at the students, I call them the COVID generation students. And you are right to say that a few years down the road, when they will be joining their professions, believe me, they won't be as good professionals as those who got the chance to be on campus and study face to face. This is one thing. Second, very important factor, and these factors have been counted by in a number of studies. UNESCO has also come up with a very comprehensive study of the impact of COVID on in education sector. And one of those problems pointed out by a number of scholars is the psychological impact of the COVID because of staying back home. I mean, particularly our female teachers and our female students who had to stay back home for online classes. They have been, forced to do the home chores as well while teaching, and some of the, funny things.
It's all over the internet. It's all over the internet.
Yeah. So psychological pressure was too much, and now when people are coming back, believe me, our psychiatrist is very busy at the university.
Exactly.
A number of teachers and students who are coming to her for advice.
Because while you're on the laptop, you cannot even lock your door. You cannot keep your partner outside as well. They're going to be banging the door, and they're like, "What are you doing inside? Come on, let me in."
There were literally
Things
times
like
when
that.
I was because that time I was studying as well when the pandemic started. So I'm taking my class online, and my phone is at the sink, and I'm washing the dishes. So things happen altogether.
Sir, your take on this as well. What would teachers require?
Well, teachers would need a lot of counseling, that's for sure, because they've been through a lot in the past couple of years. And especially when it comes to, I think it goes both ways. The students have lost a lot of learning during this time, but teachers, they were actually trained to take care of the students in a very different manner. They used to hug the students, especially with the younger students. They used to pat them on their back. But all that has finished now. So teacher feel that disconnect, especially with the young learners. And she just feels that she's unable to give out what she was trained to do. she's not fulfilling her professional duty.
Exactly.
And that is a mental trauma that she's going through every day.
True.
And on the other hand, of course, the receiving end, that's young child is unable to get that love and affection from the teacher. So I think it will take some time for teachers to get over this mental trauma and to find devise new ways to actually connect with the learners.
Oh, that's wonderful, and I guess that it's
very
a
well
wonderful,
explained, actually.
Yeah, it's a wonderful message to kind of wrap up the program as well. But thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Wonderful to have you. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. And for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you share the love with the teachers too as well. Please make sure that you do not act like as one of those parents as if you want your kid to be a Newton in like 5th grade or 3rd grade as well. So please make sure you cut everybody a slack, give them that space. Everybody has gone through it. It wasn't just you or your kid. It was the teacher, his family, or her family, their kids as well. Please, I think we really need to have a balance over here. Give them some time. And the teachers, please make sure that you do not push the kids to that extent where, you know, it's so hard for them that they actually feel like giving up on education as well. Please make sure that we maintain a balance.
That's a beautiful message, and I think we are going to end the show on this note as well. Tomorrow we have a special transmission for you, so make sure to tune it at the exact time as well. Till the next time, make sure to write us on social media with the name of Well This Morning.
Yeah.
We'll catch you tomorrow.
And I'm already very happy because we'll be talking about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his life, his seerah, and the kind of menaces which exist within the society, and then we will be taking messages from his life, how to kind of eradicate this menace or whatever menace whichever exists within the society. So look after yourselves. 1, 2, 3.
Good morning.